Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Naruto Found His Soulmate, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. She woke up the next morning, the sun having risen slightly above the trees of the forest. She then looked around to see where she was. It felt so warm and comfortable. She then noticed she was in Naruto's lap. For a moment, she thought this was a dream, and couldn't resist but to take advantage of it. She raised her head slowly and kissed him on the cheek. She smiled when she saw him grin happily. She rested her head again at the crook of his N and closed her eyes. The light breeze of the morning was blowing with harmony on them. She felt so calm. Suddenly she heard a slight yawn. She realized he had woken up. "Ne, Hinata-chan, rise and shine," he said while rubbing her back gently. She looked up to see his smiling face and blushed a bright red, realizing this wasn't a dream. She felt embarrassed but happy too. He smiled even more. As he gently lifted her from him and stood up, he was completely surprised that it felt so cold, as if all the warmness of the world had faded. Hinata felt the same. His eyes went wide for a second, realizing how cold it was without her. But he thought it was just the morning breeze, but, for once in his life, he knew his mind was talking bulls. "Come on, Hinata-chan, we need to go back to Konoha Ne," he said and offered his hand to help her stand up. She accepted it with a blush and a smile. He accidentally, though, pushed her on him when he pulled her up, making her head fall on his chest along with her hands. They both blushed a bright red. Naruto broke away. Aye, let's pack up. We've got a long way," he said nervously and went on to pack their belongings. Hinata, though, stood there stunned. Was it a blush she saw on his face? No, she couldn't believe he would blush, not for her at least. After the packing was done and they were on their way back to Konoha, there was an awkward silence between them. They just stared to the ground most of the time. Though they could steal glances on each other now and then. Of course, they didn't know. Then Naruto broke the silence at last, wanting to express that thought that roamed in his mind. "Ne, Hinata-chan," he began to get her attention. She turned to look at him, his face serious and sad at the same time. "Hi, Naruto-kun?" she asked in her always soft and gentle voice, which to his surprise, he found it adorable. It was so her. Nothing personal or anything, but, are you still going to marry that fool?" he said while rubbing the back of his head and looking straight ahead. She was surprised by the question and her eyes were wide. She shook her head lightly and he saw it with the corner of his eye. A weight was lifted from his heart that moment, and he turned to look at her beautiful, pale face. He was somehow terrorized by his own thoughts. Why did they kept coming up like this? He couldn't deny it forever, something was amiss. Anyway, he didn't care. He kind of liked it. No one made him feel that way before, not even Sakura. "I don't think so, Naruto-kun. This man, he doesn't deserve to even be a ninja," she said, her voice serious and surprisingly cold at the recall of his image in her mind. Naruto knew she didn't like him one bit, and who could blame her? The man would easily leave her to save his ass on the very first difficult situation on a mission, for they would do missions together, for they were ninjas who were married, though this couldn't possibly happen now, would it? Naruto's weight on his heart was lifted by a good deal. He smiled at her, which made her blush and smile back. How he loved this smile. It was so real, so sincere, so hers. "Ne, Hinata, want to hear something about Ero-sennin, Jiraiya, his former teacher and super first-class pervert?" he asked. She knew his mood was lifted by a good amount and she was happy for it. Though she knew most stories about Jiraiya were mostly about perverted acts, she was eager to hear his voice. They were both laughing at the stories Naruto said. Jiraiya once had returned with a woman on his back that didn't want to get off him no matter what he did. She even proposed him to marriage, and that freaked the Sannin so much, that Naruto could have sworn he hadn't seen Jiraiya run like this all his life. She laughed for it was funny, and he laughed because she found it funny. He always loved to see her smile. He didn't understand why. He wondered about it all the time though. What was happening? He had never felt like this. Even with Sakura. And, tea is a pain to miss. After a few more hours of walking and laughing and talking, they reached Konoha. The guards questioned for a second why they were here so early. Nearly everyone knew about the planned wedding of the Hyuga heiress. Then the guard remembered something before they could leave. Wait. They both turned around to look at the guard who had extended his hand in motion for them to stop. Tsunade-sama wanted us to tell you that she requires your presence as soon as you return. For some reason, she knew you would come early, you were supposed to be off for 2 more days, he said but shrugged his shoulders and sat back on his chair reading some reports. They both looked at each other and nodded. Naruto wasn't in the least surprised to see Tsunade sleeping. He was surprised with himself that he didn't want to yell. Something was holding him back and that something simply stood next to him with its pale lavender eyes wide open and looking at the Hokage. Don't worry. Car-san, mother, is always like that, he said, bewildered that he for once called someone mother. Hinata was surprised too. She was about to ask but he placed a hand on her shoulder. I'll tell you later. She knew he was to become the Hokage. He had told her when they went to his apartment, but he hadn't told anyone about anything like calling Tsunade mother. She shrugged it off for the moment, she could ask him later. Naruto went closer and stood before her desk. Hinata stood next to him. He told her to duck and after giving him a questioning look, she did. He then started poking Tsunade and saying, Tsunade, Aba-chan wake up. He said and repeated it several times. He then saw Tsunade's hand flinch and he immediately ducked. After a second, a book was flying towards the door. Naruto, you baka, idiot, her voice trailed off when she saw no one was there. She then gasped when Naruto appeared across her desk, a wide grin on his face. After a second, Hinata rose too. Tsunade grinned, oh, so you two are back. Good. Naruto now looked at her confused and so did Hinata. Please take a sit, she said, pointing with her hand the 2 seats across her desk. They both stared at her at first, but then started looking between them and the Hokage. Tsunade grinned, what's up with Kakarei? Everything went good right? She asked, an evil grin on her face. Naruto frowned immediately at the sound of his name. That fateless coward must have reached his compound by now, or he's somewhere in the forest, probably killed by a cat or something. Not that I care anyway, Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Naruto, not care. Something was amiss. What happened out there, Naruto? She asked politely. He looked at Hinata who nodded and he nodded back throwing her a smile which made her blush. He started explaining the whole situation with Hinata filling some blanks in his memory. Kakarei's bragging all the way till they settled for the night, Kabuto's attack, Kakarei's selfishness and false self-esteem reaching inhuman levels, the fight, and finally, Kakarei's rather unique scolding. Tsunade felt terribly sick. How could the Hyugas get their heiress to marry such a fool? No, fool is only an understatement. Such a monster, he could have Hinata cared at the very first difficult situation, but Naruto was there, he cared for her, a lot. She knew Naruto was the exact opposite of this pathetic SC and she was glad that her decisions were right. Thank you for explaining the whole thing, Naruto, Hinata, she said, throwing glances of compassion to them both. You prove me right this time, she said. Naruto now looked at her confused. How so? He asked. Hinata was wondering the same thing. Tsunade sighed, look, the whole marriage by letter thing is rather disgusting to me. When I learned that Hinata was going to be married by force, I had to do something. I couldn't persuade your father to stop it, since he wanted it to it seems, but at least, I looked to find more about the man you would take, she said. Now Hinata looked at her with hope. Maybe now she could face her father and tell him the whole thing, tell him that she won't get married with just anyone. Your tale proves my information true. Kakarei is an extremely spoiled man. He was raised in the opposite way any shinobi would. He ate with golden spoons and lived without even knowing the feeling of emotional, or even physical pain. He never moved a finger to gain respect. He never trained, and somehow, Kami-sama, God, only knows how, he became a ninja. I was rather disgusted. He loved himself more than anything in the world. At these words, Naruto remembered Gaara. This one though, was raised in the exact opposite way. Gaara loved himself only, but he was a powerful cold-blooded cur before Naruto saved him from the darkness of his own mind. Don't ask how, Big story it is. I knew all this, but I didn't tell a thing to Hiyashi. I knew he already knew all this, and yet, for the good and greatness of his clan, he let you marry such a fool. Even Naruto is a far better choice if you ask me or anyone else. At this, they both blushed a shade of red. Surprisingly enough, Naruto didn't even start protesting. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. That dense barker finally got an idea. Only time will tell though. I'm proud of you, Naruto, she thought to herself while smiling. Anyway, the reason I sent Naruto specifically is that I know his passion to protect his friends. I hoped, yes I hoped some would rub off on this fool. But from what you told me, it hasn't. Hinata, your father doesn't know anything about this. You must tell him though that you deny the marriage. I can't have one of my best shinobis to court with such a worthless SC. Anyway, that was all I had to say. Off you go, she said and waved a hand in motion for them to go. They both nodded after looking at each other and walked out of the room. Tsunade sighed again. Don't do anything stupid, Naruto, she thought. It was getting dark now. The evening sun had begun to falter behind forests of Konoha. Naruto then realized he was starved. He looked at Hinata, who had the same expression on her face. He smiled. Hinata-chan, want to come with me for ramen? He asked. She was taken aback for a second. Was he asking her on a date? No, he just wanted her to come with him for dinner, didn't he? She just stared at him for a minute, blushing as always, of course. He noticed the silence though. It's okay if you don't want to come, he said while looking down and trailing off in his last words. She shook her head and smiled. I'd love to, Naruto-kun, she said softly, and his face immediately brightened. But of all pains, the greatest pain. A few minutes later, they reached Ichiraku ramen stand. They both sat on a stool across the counter and ordered their preferences. Naruto ordered, to Ayami's complete horror, 2 bowls of ramen, and Hinata only 1. Ayami noticed however the nervousness between them, and caught an idea of what was going on. She smiled. Naruto had finally caught an idea. While they were eating, Naruto couldn't stand the awkward silence. He wanted answers for this strange feelings towards her, but he needed to ask in a way that wouldn't reveal him, at least not yet. Any, Hinata-chan, he asked while having swallowed a good deal of noodles. She turned her gaze from her half-finished bowl to look into his cerulean pools. She blushed. Hi, Naruto-kun. She asked gently. He made a sad smile, but his eyes were filled with happiness as if he remembered a happy memory of the past. To tell the truth, he did. The way he cheered for Hinata in the Chunin exams when they were younger, her lifting his hopes to new levels before his battle with Neji, the missions they had done together, the time they had spent together. He wanted to know how she felt, badly. She noticed the sad, yet somehow happy look on his face, and her eyes were filled with worry for a second. You know, I like a girl, he started, and Hinata felt her heart ache. He liked a girl. Who was she? Was it her? She had to know, she hoped, she dreamed, she needed to know. And I'm just not sure how to tell her. I mean, she's beautiful and all that, kind-hearted and much more, but I don't know, how will I know she returns the feelings? He asked, looking at her now, eyes full of question. But at the moment he looked at her in the eye, she noticed something more, something he tried to hide behind the questions. She wanted to know, she needed to know. Anno, Naruto-kun, who is she? She asked, but he looked away as if in embarrassment. She made him uncomfortable. What for? She was his friend. Or was it? No, she needed proof. I mean, Naruto-kun, every girl needs a different approach, she said, looking down and trailing off in the last words. Naruto turned to look at her, only to see her looking at her bowl of ramen and playing with her chopsticks in the soup. How was he supposed to answer? He didn't want to tell her yet, he wasn't ready. He didn't want her to freak out or something, faint and all these things. He needed to know. He had to make a different approach. Well, let's just say that she is a close friend, she doesn't like much to be in public and she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She is comfortable enough when close to me, and, he trailed off, thinking that if he continued he could reveal too much. She alleviated her gaze from the bowl to him, only to see him looking nervously at the counter. He never was so nervous before. Why was it so hard to tell her? Why was it so hard to just say he liked someone else? She opened her mouth to ask a question, but was interrupted by Ayami. So, Naruto, is this girl your girlfriend? Ayami asked teasingly and Naruto's eyes went wide. Hinata-chan. What? She's just a friend, he said, not believing even his own words. He looked down at the counter, closing his eyes. He didn't want to say this. He didn't want to. He wanted her to be more than a friend, much more. Why he hesitated? Why was he so foolish? It is to love, but love in vain. Hinata stared at him wide-eyed. Just a friend. Just a friend. Just a friend. This thought lingered and repeated in her mind for more than a minute before it could sunk in. So, she was just a friend, nothing more to him. She felt her heart hitting the ground, her world being devoured in darkness. Her dreams shuttering to pieces. If she didn't fight hard to keep the tears from falling, and if she did look at him in the eye, she could see the regret and sorrow he held for his own words. He didn't turn to look at her. He didn't want to see the reaction. Ayami in the meantime, realized what she had done. Oh, she thought and turned around towards the kitchen. Hinata stood up, fighting the tears back. Naruto noticed it, and slightly turned around to look at her. She wore a sad smile on her face. He knew it was fake. So, he knew now. He knew the impact of his words, he could even grasp the inner meaning of her actions. He wanted to take them back, he wanted to right the wrong, he just needed a chance. Hinata-chan, he said with sadness. She turned away to look out at the dark streets, not wanting to meet his gaze. So, he knew about her feelings. He was just toying with her around. And now, he was just sad that he had to tell her he loved someone else. She wanted the earth to swallow her. She then felt a warm hand on her shoulder. Hinata-chan, he repeated, plea. Before he could continue, she shook her head. It's okay Naruto-kun. I know. I'll just go to bed. It's getting late, she said, fighting hard to keep herself from sobbing. Was she crying? God no, he made her cry. Why? Why did she cry? He knew the words, just a friend, hit a spot, but that much. He needed to make up to it. His soul couldn't stand it. Before he could speak, she had already started walking away, and in a few seconds, she dashed away in the night. His heart ached. She was gone. He didn't want to believe it. No. Why did it hurt so much? He had to stop this. Before thinking anything else, he dashed forward behind her. At the stand, old man Ichiraku and his daughter Ayami shook their heads, looking down in sadness. He jumped from rooftop to rooftop, scanning the area around for her. He could catch the faint smell of lavender with his Kyuubi chakra enhanced smell. He followed the smell suit. He had to find her and talk to her. He had to right the wrong. She wanted to get away. She wanted to go somewhere and cry it all out. She wanted to vanish. She knew what she did wasn't and the best right now, but she couldn't really face him right now. She had to gather the mental pieces of her heart, put them together and face him again, even if he was with someone else. Soon, her feet carried her at the Hokage monument. She sat there on the head of the fourth Hokage and looked up into the spotted night. It was beautiful, the night was filled with stars and right above Konoha hanged a full moon, bathing the village in its pale light. She felt a few more tears falling down her pale cheeks. How she wanted things to change, to have a chance. The smell was stronger now. He had reached the Hokage mountain and the smell of lavender guided him up to the monuments. There, sitting on the head of the fourth, was Hinata. He slowly approached, trying not to scare her so she couldn't run away again. His footsteps were as silent as can be. She noticed someone approaching from behind. Was it an assassin? She didn't care. Life was worthless without him. If the sorrow could be taken away by that way, so be it. She felt him coming closer and closer, slowly, painfully slow even, as if he didn't want to scare her. Finally, she heard him sit next to her. She dared to take a glance at him, and what she saw made it even more painful. But if you look back, Hinata, I'm sorry, you're not just a friend. You can't be. You're one of my best friends, and I would rather than to see you cry. He said. She felt the sorrow, yet truth in his words. Her world seemed to have color again. Her life seemed to have meaning. So, was there a chance? Was there? She remembered the fact that he already loved someone, and her sorrow returned full force. Thank you. And Naruto-kun, she said. At least, she was a good friend. And she would stay a good friend. No matter who he loved, she wanted him to be happy, even if she wasn't the cause of it. The tears were dry now. She felt much better. No matter what, she would be there for him, no matter who he loved, no matter what she was to him. Even if it hurt like hell, she wouldn't give up, for him. When she was sure her tears were dry and gone, she lifted her head from her lap to look at him. He was looking up at the stars. No, I must thank you, Hinata-chan, he said, looking down again. She was confused now. Thank her for what? You always were there for me, always listened me, you were always a good friend. I just wish you were something more, he thought the last part to himself. She felt happiness combine with the sadness in her heart. No matter who he loved, she would be there for him, always there. She would stand by his side even if he didn't love her back, his guardian angel. Her heart was aching, the weight nearly unbearable, but she had to be strong, for him. She had to stand her ground. He sat there, next to her, looking at the stars with his rare tranquil expression. Now that she thought about it, she was the only one he exposed this side of himself, the calm and gentle one. To tell the truth, he never told her who the girl was. Was it she? Was she the one? She wanted to know, she had to know, Ano. Naruto-kun, who do you like? She asked nervously, dreading the answer, who do I like? He asked, looking back at her and blinking a few times. He smiled, seeing the confusion and nervousness in her expression. So, there was a chance, eh? I'll just tell you, she's an angel, he said and looked back at the stars. She blinked in confusion a few times. An angel. Was she that good? She wished she could be that person, she wished. She was still staring at him though, her expression the one of confusion and sadness. She was smiling sadly. He looked at her again, and noticed that she was still looking at him. He was lost for a few seconds in this lavender moons, and he could stare at him all day long. She blushed a slight pink, realizing she was staring, while he grinned. He tilted his head towards the sky. You like it? He asked, still grinning widely. She simply smiled back, a true one this time, and nodded. He could sense her nervousness though. Something bothering you, Hinata-chan? He asked again, his voice serious but gentle. She looked up at him and thought for a second. She wanted to ask so many things. She wanted to know him better than she already did. A few images flashed in her mind. She then realized something. Actually, yes, Naruto-kun. She said. He looked at her with curiosity. When you fought Kabuto back there was something strange about your chakra, and your eyes looked different, she said softly and in a low voice. He gasped. She had to ask this. Of all things. Now what could he tell her? He didn't want to tell her about Kyubi. It would ruin everything. Nothing, Hinata-chan, it was nothing. Maybe you needed some rest, he said sadly, but Hinata knew better. He was hiding something from her, something he didn't want her to know, didn't trust her to know. Back at the pain. It's okay, Naruto-kun, I understand, you don't trust me and, she was on the merge of tears. Naruto noticed it and immediately his heart fell. He didn't want to make her cry. Not a chance in hell. He circled his arm around her waist and held her a little closer. No, Hinata-chan. Please don't cry, it's not that I don't trust you, he said, trying to ease her. Even as she leaned and started sobbing on his shoulder, she was persistent. Then why? I am too weak to know. Am I someone, she was about to cry again. He shook his head. No, Hinata. You're not weak, I am for not being able to tell you, it's just that, you might, even hate me if I told you, he said, trailing off at the last words and looked down. His sad expression couldn't go unnoticed. I won't hate you, Naruto-kun, I love you too much to hate you, she thought the last part to herself. He still looked down at the ground. Please, Naruto-kun, trust me, she said softly. He looked up at her. She saw the pain and sadness in his eyes. He was afraid he would lose her, afraid she would go away, vanish, but he had to say it or else he would lose her anyway. He let out a sigh and stood up. He took a few steps forward, now a few steps away from the edge of the mountain. Hinata, he began. She was sitting a few steps behind him, staring at him with curiosity. You remember when the Kyubi attacked Konoha? 17 years ago. he asked, his face looking forward at the village down the cliffs and not back at her. Yes, the fourth SDK the demon, she said, her soft voice music to his ears, but the pain, he couldn't stand it, he couldn't just let her go, but then, he was already in deep S to go back now. He sighed again, Hinata, the demon wasn't Ked. He couldn't be Ked. So the fourth sealed him, in, a baby, he said, his voice covered in sadness. Hinata now could get the idea, and even had an idea of the big picture, but she wanted him to tell it. She stood up. Naruto's heart now felt heavier. He had to finish this, otherwise he would have a heart attack. Hinata, the QB was sealed, in me, I've been its carrier for 17 years, I can use its powers, I hold the demon. He trailed off in the last word and sighed. His eyes were in the merge of tears. What would she do now? She would start screaming, demanding explanations. She would run away crying. She would attack him. He heard soft footsteps behind him, and well, she did what he expected the least of all. Then you may see. She hugged him. His eyes were wide in shock. Was it real or he was dreaming? There they were, he told her his long-covered secret, and all she did was hug him, tightly. Her grip was strong but yet so gentle. Maybe, there was a chance. He felt all his body being soothed at her touch. He wanted this embrace to last. He then heard her soft voice speak once more, now I understand, why they treated you like this, I just wish I could be here sooner, I wish, she said between her sobs, her face buried at his back. Now she knew why every adult in the village despised him. She hated herself for not approaching him sooner. He turned around and hugged her tightly, and she buried her face in his chest, sobbing lightly. He was taken completely off guard at her reaction. You don't hate me? He asked, his voice gentle and not above a whisper, but she heard him all right. No, how could I ever hate you? I can't hate you, she said softly as she was still hugging him, her head still lying on his chest. Hinata-chan, why? He asked, his voice full of curiosity, but his eyes, as she noticed when she looked up, were full of a mixture of happiness and sadness. He stared down at this lavender pools of light. The moonlight made her face look so beautiful. Now that he thought about it, everything about her was beautiful. From her slim, well-curved body to her adorable lavender eyes. He could stare in them forever. She looked inside these blue orbs that were so clearly his. So full of emotion, so full of everything she ever wanted. One thing was missing though at the moment, and now was the chance to see if it existed, for her. She needed to know, she had to tell him. It was now or never, and she couldn't stand the idea of the last. Why? He whispered again, his eyes never leaving hers. Because, she looked away to the left. Her expression full of nervousness, because, she wanted to take it out, wanted to burst it all out of her. But the fear of rejection still roamed inside her. What if he didn't return the feelings? What if he rejected her and stopped being her friend? She couldn't stand the idea, but yet, she couldn't live knowing she had a chance, but wasted it. It was so goddamn annoying. He nearly knew what she was about to say. She was now looking at him in the eye. Hinata-chan, he began to mumble himself, his eyes never leaving hers. Finally, it all came bursting out. It's not in vain. I love you, they both said in unison. Both pairs of eyes went wide. True, they did expect something like that coming, but not this. He said it. The weight was lifted, yet she responded in the same way. So there wasn't just a chance. It was there the whole time. She couldn't believe it. She was the mystery girl. She was the one he spoke about before. She was his angel. The happiness roaming inside her kept her from even flinching. They kept staring into each other's eyes for what seemed an eternity when Naruto did something he should have done a long time ago. He slowly leaned forward, his face inches away from hers. He closed his eyes and so did she. In a matter of another second, their lips met in a tender kiss. She surprised him once more. Her lips were so soft, so tender, as if all her kindness and beauty resided in this small place. Her heart was pounding like crazy. He pulled her even closer to deepen the kiss, to feel more of her warmth. After a second, they were both tightly warped into each other's arms, her hands around his and his around her waist. They broke the kiss after what seemed of a minute or an eternity of only touching each other's lips. Their eyes met again, and now both of them could see clearly, an emotion printed all over their face, love. I love you, Hinata-chan, he said, pulling her even closer and leaning again for another claim. She didn't resist, not even the slightest. Her dreams were all coming true in one night. I love you too, Naruto-kun, she said in a soft whisper before their lips met once more. This time, he didn't hesitate. He licked her lips asking for entrance, and she gladly let him in, taste all of her, while she did the same. Their tongues massaging each other, wanting to explore each other's mouth fully. After what seemed like an eternity, they separated, the need for oxygen overwhelming. They both panted lightly but smiled at each other. And so the night went on, they, kissing under the stars and the full moon. Holding each other, not wanting to let go. They've been far away, for far too long, and now, in the end, they held each other. One thought raced in their mind, please, never let me go, she thought. I'm not leaving you anymore, was his response, as if he could see her thoughts in her eyes. They both wished in whispers what they just thought under the full moon, so only each other's ears could catch it, and as if in response, a pair of stars fell from the sky when their lips met even once more this night. He now knew that he wasn't alone, not now, not ever. She had been there for him, but he was so blind to see through the illusion called Sakura. He was angry at himself for not noticing her before, not seeing what truly was there for him. He didn't even have to struggle like this for his dream of acknowledgement, for it was right there, in this wonderful pools of lavender. They met each other many times this night, both of them wanting to catch up for all these years of waste. After an hour or so of kissing, they were both leaning on a tree a few meters away from the Hokage monument, their eyes fixed on the sky full of stars and the full moon. A star suddenly fell from the sky. "Eni, Hinata-chan," he said softly as he looked down at the girl that hugged him tightly, her head resting on his shoulder. "Hi Naruto-kun?" she asked, her voice not above a whisper but yet so tender. "A star fell. Make a wish," he said, smiling at her who now was looking up at him. She smiled. "I don't have to," she said. His eyes now emitted curiosity. "Why?" he asked gently. She smiled again. "Because all I could wish for has already come true," she said softly and leaned towards him for another kiss. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.